Yes, I watched the college football games tonight on a Friday night, so you don't have to. Three games tonight for CFB Friday night, and each one actually, surprisingly, having their own little stakes into the playoff contention for some of the teams participating in these games. We had Northwestern versus USC, Tulane versus Memphis, and Houston versus UCF. And USC, of course, is still in that playoff play. They're ranked number 19. That they still have multiple teams to play that would give them a boost in the rankings if they were to beat them. But it all starts holding your own against Northwestern, and then we had Tulane versus Memphis, which was a huge game for the G5 spot in the college football playoffs. And then we had Houston versus UCF, probably the one with the least amount of playoff stakes. UCF 4-4, Houston yet still lingering around the Big 12 championship area. They're fourth in the Big 12 after they won tonight, and they're still around that area. They have the hope for a lot to happen, but it's not completely impossible when you put yourself in a position to be number 4 in the Big 12. But we're going to start with USC versus Northwestern. Probably the least exciting. Yes, the least exciting game of the night, but it had the biggest team, USC, playing 9 p.m. on a Friday. The 7-2 USC Trojans, 5-1 in conference play, looking to get another conference win. Well, they're 4-1 conference play, looking to get another conference win, which they did, making them 5-1 in conference play. Jada Mayava, pretty solid game. USC, pretty solid game in general, 38-17. They're able to control the game. It was pretty close in the first half. They went 7-7 tied in the first quarter, exchanging touchdowns, and then USC actually in the second quarter, at the end of the second quarter, is 14-14, about to go into half, and they were able to. Jada Mayava threw a pick to Najee Story of Northwestern. He's rumbling, tumbling, thinking he's about to have a pick six into the end zone. But Mayava sticks him, sends him flying, sends the ball jarring loose, and it passes the goal line fumble, so it's a touchback. That was very interesting. So he saved 7 points right there. Northwestern would have been up 21-14, most likely going into the half, but instead USC was able to score, and it was 21-14 going into the half in USC's favor instead, and then there on out, they're able to completely just control the game and walk away with 10 points in the fourth quarter. They scored a touchdown in the third, and then that led to their 38-17 victory for USC, which these are one of those games. Yeah, you look ahead to their schedule. They have Iowa and Oregon coming up, two huge games to consider for the CFB contention and just contention and Big 12 contention also, because they're number 3 in the Big 10. Yet you gotta handle business against Northwestern, of course. You gotta look good against Northwestern, of course, because you need those rankings. You need those old ass committee people with the white hats to boost your ranking, and that's how you do it. You handle Northwestern. You can't be in a dogfight with Northwestern like it was going in the second half, but they're able to come out and control the game there on out after in the second half. Yeah, but so they did what they had to do. And this is one of those spots that teams could get caught looking ahead. Like USC could have got caught looking ahead to Iowa. Could have got looking ahead to 2 weeks from then to Oregon. And looking like, okay, we can, if we beat these two teams, we're in the playoffs. We're in the Big 10 championship. And sometimes you can get caught up looking ahead to those big matchups. And you don't worry about Northwestern. And Northwestern, probably one of the worst teams in the Big 10. They could jump on you, but they didn't jump on them. They didn't give them the opportunity to jump on them. Jada Mayav had a great game, 299 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. He did have that interception. He said King Miller had a big night, 15 carries, 127 yards, 1 touchdown. And then Makai, their 2 receiver duo, Makai and Lemon, 11 receptions, 161 yards and a touchdown. And Jacoby Lane, 7 receptions, 74 yards and a touchdown. So they were spreading the ball to their players, so the playmakers giving the ball, and they made plays happen, leading to the victory. Now, good old American action. Let's get to Memphis versus Tulane, where I believe Memphis number 22 in the nation facing Tulane, and this had huge stakes considering that G5 spot, because that G5 spot's going to go to the American Conference winner, of course. That's the fifth best conference in college football. And Memphis beat USF, who just absolutely destroyed UTSA. I mean, they absolutely picked apart UTSA on Thursday. And so they're in a prime position to win the American Conference. If they just win out, most likely they'll be in the conference championship game. But they have a tough test, and they have another team that's looking to only had one loss in conference play heading into this game, just like Memphis, and they're another team looking to fight their way into conference play. And this is a huge, huge game for them. Tulane did lose to USF, but they had Memphis ahead of them. That's what you're looking at. And Memphis fell to Tulane. It was a pretty interesting game. Tulane was in control for most of the game, but Memphis made a comeback in that fourth quarter, scoring 15 points in that fourth quarter with their quarterback on a wobbly leg. And they were able to make the comeback, but it wasn't just they weren't able to put together that last drive. I mean, they had two shots. They got two important stops to have that last drive, to try and have that scoring last drive. But on the second to last one, Brendan Lewis, their quarterback, he was just hurt. He was getting wobbled. There was a holding call. Then he got cracked, and they weren't able to make big plays. So then they had a call on their backup quarterback. Who was their backup quarterback? Arrington Maiden on the last drive to help to will them to a victory. He was able to make some big plays. It was like 2nd and 20, and was able to hit some receivers and get that first down and get to about Tulane's 30. But then it was 4th and 2, took it down to the 2-minute warning, and then they came back out with a false start. It's 4th and 7. They did have the one-on-one they wanted, but they weren't able to hit the receiver. And unfortunately, it was a turnover on downs, and Tulane took control and was able to bleed the clock with those final minute and 30 seconds. But Jake Retzloff, amazing game, 332 yards, 3 touchdowns. As I said, Brendan Lewis, pretty good game, 317 yards, 2 touchdowns. He was able to will his team. Tulane was in control. I mean, they exchanged touchdowns coming out the gates, but in that second quarter, Tulane, I believe, scored 3 straight touchdowns. Memphis only responded with 3 points at field goal. So going into halftime, it was 35-17. Then they came out hit a field. It was 38-17 right out of the third quarter. But Memphis able to go for 2 in the fourth quarter after getting a touchdown. And so before you know it, it's 25-38. And then they get a stop, get another touchdown. Crazy touchdown by Brady Cluse, 32-38. And they got the 2 stops they needed. So they had 2 shots at winning this game. But they weren't able to put together that drive. And the American Conference is pretty entertaining. Yeah. For a G5 conference, it's pretty entertaining stuff going on. You have Navy now at the top of the conference, 5-1, 7-1 overall, which is a team that Memphis does play. But Memphis looks like they're like in the hunt. They're in the hunt graphic. They're 4-2 in the conference now, as they lost to UAB also earlier in the season. Despite having a great win over USF, you lose to UAB, and you're like, jeez, kind of screwed us by losing to UAB. But Tulane's in a good spot, 4-1. USF is 4-1 in the conference. North Texas is 4-1 in the conference, but USF holds that tiebreaker over Tulane and North Texas. So Navy's in that prime spot because they have one more conference game played. And Navy also does not play. Oh, they do play. They do play USF next week. So that's going to be basically win and in the conference championship for USF, because they have UAB and Rice after that, which 2 teams that should not be able to hang with the USF offense. Now on to the last game that we had tonight, Houston versus UCF. Probably the worst game we had. It was a close game, interesting at the last moments, but other than that, I mean, it was turnover-ridden, bad offense by UCF. The only reason they were able to really hang in there with that bad offense is because of the interceptions that Philip Dunham had. He had 3 interceptions tonight. 3 interceptions, and one of them was a pick 6 for a touchdown. The others were in UCF territory when they happened, and that's why the score was 30-27 Houston. So UCF was able to hang in there, give their fans hope at home. Pretty nice crowd for UCF. But here's what happened. And this is the last drive of the game. It was a controversial decision. Taven Jackson, who's been their quarterback for most of the season, Offense, pretty stagnant. Pretty sucks. He only has 136 yards passing. He has 1 interception. Haven't done much besides, they can't run the ball in these last minutes. So what does Scott Frost do in this situation? He goes to Davy Belfort, who's the 4th-string quarterback. Went to my high school a couple years ago, actually. 4th-string quarterback. He's amazing. He's a dual threat. He can run the ball. He's pretty fast. It's actually surprising me how fast he was running out there. He got UCF in the prime spot. All he needs is a field goal to go overtime. He got UCF in a prime field position, so they want to go for the shot. He has the shot to be the hero at home. Put UCF aboard up with 10 seconds left. Wide open receiver. Wide open. Couldn't hit him in time. Probably had happy feet. Didn't throw it right. Led him a little bit too much to the right. Could have led him to the left. He probably would have had more of a shot. The receiver at least would have had a shot at breaking it up. Took too long. Defense recovers. Comes back. And they got the interception on that play. But obviously, 11 seconds puts the game on ice. 30-27. Houston. Pretty controversial decision for Scott Frost. He was getting flamed on Twitter. But then he came out and said the team was dealing with a hamstring injury. So he decided to go with Davy Belfort. And honestly, I think it was the right decision. I mean, he was able to run the ball using his legs and being the threat, hand it off, doing the read option. Was able to get him into that prime field goal position. But he's a shorter guy and shorter quarterback. Shaky. Comes into the game with under 2 minutes left. And to expect him to make a big throw like that, that's why you stick with your starter. But also, the starter wasn't really doing nothing. Taven Jackson wasn't doing nothing. And Davy got him there. But unfortunately, they wanted to go for the big shot. He wanted to be the hero. He wanted to go for the hero shot. He wanted to go for the knockout. And he couldn't execute and ended up backfiring. But Houston had a pretty good game besides the turnovers. I mean, Connor Wegman was just throwing picks to Philip Dunphy. He couldn't get away from the guy. The guy, he's going to have nightmares and PTSD about it for years to come. 3 interceptions, all 3 going to him. But if you read the numbers, Houston, 433 total yards compared to UCF's 282. 4 turnovers for Houston and 2 UCF. Okay, that's the one stat. But 433 total yards. 282 total yards for UCF. Houston, 26 first downs. UCF, 14. Penalties, Houston, 3, 25 yards. UCF, 9, 75. Third down conversions, 50% for Houston, 8 of 16. UCF, 33%, 5 of 15. Fourth down conversions, 1 of 3 for Houston. UCF, 0. Possession time, 35 minutes for Houston. 25 for UCF. I mean, you read those stats, Houston was in control of the game. Houston was winning this game throughout. But they weren't. UCF was able to go 10-0 early in the game before Houston responded with 2 touchdowns and UCF responded with their own touchdown due to Jaden Nix running it in. And then they came back with another touchdown because of the pick 6. And then other than that, the offense went completely stagnant. They lost Miles Montgomery on a 1-yard touchdown right up the middle, which is their number 1 running back, which is their dude. They had Jaden Nixon, who was still good, 11 carries, 62 yards, and a touchdown. But Miles Montgomery is their number 1 guy. Jaden Nixon and Miles Montgomery are kind of like a 1-2 punch. They're both pretty good running backs, but Miles is definitely the one. And they had the shot. They had the opportunity to get another win in the Big 12. And to put them in a spot to only have one more win before they're bowl eligible in the not new era, but in the second chapter of the Scott Frost era, Section 1. And they weren't able to do it. Houston was able to come out. And Houston, a sneaky 8-2. 5-2 in the Big 12. Pretty interesting. They're sitting at that fourth seed in the Big 12. And they don't have a loss to to Cincinnati, who's 3rd. So they need Cincinnati to lose there. And they don't, which will put them ahead. And then they do have a loss to Texas Tech, unfortunately. But if Texas Tech loses to BYU and Cincinnati loses, they're at one of these games, and Houston wins out TCU Baylor, you're looking at Houston versus BYU, possibly, in the Big 12 championship, which is very interesting. Where Texas Tech does have to lose twice, but they lose to BYU, and then Texas Tech, anything happens from there. Which Texas Tech is a really good team. Which to say that they lose those games, interesting. UCF and West Virginia. But who says? You never know. Coming off a loss, you lose one of those games. And Houston is in like one hopeful, one prayer away from the Big 12 championship, which is not something that was expected from Houston. Fritz got his boys lined up. Fritz got his boys in a little spot that gives them hope. Connor Weigman, former Texas A&M quarterback, wheeling his team to an 8-2 record. That's pretty impressive. It's pretty impressive. But other than that, that was CFB for Friday. That was the first time doing this. I got bored, so I was like, why not recap college football for Friday? Why not? Who cares? It was actually pretty interesting. UCF Houston game kept me on my toes. I wanted to see Davi do good, but he ended up throwing a pick. And then Memphis and Tulane, of course, was a damn good game. Jake Rutzloff is that guy. He's pretty damn good. And Tulane's pretty damn good. And that American Conference is pretty damn good. They're truthfully underrated. They're very underrated by the rankings and the AP poll and the committee and all that. And it's going to be very interesting to see who walks out. You got Navy, USF, you got Tulane, North Texas, and Memphis might be a little bit out of it, but they're not completely out of it. They only have 2 conference losses. Everybody else has 1. So that American Conference is very, very interesting. USC got their handle win. They got their must-win win. They got the game they needed to handle. They took care of business where they needed to take care of business. And now they have 2 big games against Iowa and Oregon. And USC is also in a prime spot to be in that Big Ten championship, which is very, 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 very interesting. Other than that, we'll see you in the next one. We'll see what happens next. What are we going to recap next? It's obviously going to be CFB from tomorrow, which should be really good. Other than that, peace out.